Okay, so you say certain things, but you yourself, Thaïs, where are your children? Thaïs, hello.
Hello, Vincent. I'm great, feeling good.
We're meeting in Toulouse. I didn't know you were from here.
That's right. On my mother's side, we're from the southwest. I did all my studies in Toulouse, so it's a city I know very well, which I left about, 4 years ago, I'd say, but I come back quite regularly to visit my family.
Okay, so we're going to walk around there for an hour or two, we'll see. Then we'll discuss what's new with you in particular.
Yeah, what we could say about it, but we're going to talk about lots of interesting things. I have no doubt about that.
I saw a video. There was a moment when you explained to him that you had completely changed, specifically your approach. Well, not your ideological stance, of course, but rather your way of doing things. And that you were disillusioned.
Yes, I seriously considered quitting everything. Honestly, I'm always tempted to leave social media. Yes, well, it's true that I released a video a few months ago that explained my change of topic a bit more in depth. Let's say, because as you said, I still keep the ideas I've always had, especially regarding insecurity, immigration. Well, we're on a channel where we talk a lot about that topic. But so, for those who don't know me, I was active for quite a while in Génération Identitaire before that youth movement was dissolved. It was a youth movement that fought against the Islamization of our country, against mass immigration, against the negative effects of globalization on our country, and for the preservation of our identity. It dissolved in 2021, so I started my YouTube channel and discussed these topics for a while. And then there came a time when indeed I felt like I had, for my part, covered the topic a bit. And without denying the positions I had taken, I started talking more about relationships between men and women. So at first glance, the connection between the two doesn't necessarily seem obvious. But you should know that I was raised in a rather traditional family. I have 8 brothers and sisters, a very Catholic, practicing family. So that's the upbringing I had. And actually, I noticed a big problem with human relationships between men and women around me. And then there's the direct impact on the French birth rate. People need to meet and form lasting couples to have children, but that seems increasingly difficult now. For me, it's a topic I was already interested in because personally, well, I'm in my 20s. It's kind of the age group that's directly affected by this. So I started talking about it. And that's it. Not everyone necessarily understood this somewhat surprising transition. So it's true that I made a video to explain it. And also some other things that we might come back to later.
Thay, what do you think is the problem between men and women in France today?
The problem actually, well, there are several, but generally speaking, I would say that men and women don't understand each other at all anymore. Of course, there have always been major misunderstandings. Since we have different ways of thinking, psychological differences that are absolutely huge actually between men and women, which are largely due to biological reasons. But actually the problem compared to before is that in the past we more or less knew about these differences. We knew that men and women were different but complementary and that we would never really fully understand each other. And then, based on the idea that these differences existed, well, women were taught, okay, so you should behave more like this. With men, depending on what we were looking for, men were also given rules of conduct regarding women, except that...
Magnificent.
Very clever.
There's a manly man, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
In his own way.
It's very brave, isn't it? But so actually that's it. Before we were aware of these biological differences and today we deny them. Actually that's it. The difference is that today feminism has influenced almost everyone's minds by explaining that there was no difference in behavior between men and women. That we all thought the same way, that all of this was just cultural. And actually, women were encouraged to have men's behaviors when it comes to dating, relationships, and vice versa. And in fact, all of this, instead of freeing people, contrary to what we thought, it created a lot of frustration and misunderstanding. And today we end up with some pretty catastrophic surveys that show us. It was the American organization Morgan Stanley that reported that 47% of women will be single and childless by 2030. Which is actually huge. Anyway, I think we all notice it a bit in our daily lives, in our circles, that being single is becoming pretty common. So what I'm trying to do is actually remind people of things that seem obvious to me but clearly aren't anymore. How do men and women work? In a kind of simple and straightforward way. What? Really? Beyond ideology?
by relying quite a bit on science, especially evolutionary psychology. I saw that, and actually it's pretty rare on YouTube for people to reference evolutionary psychology. I was really passionate about it for a while, and I was actually surprised that you referenced it.
Well, I kind of fell into it, so I'm far from being an expert on the subject either. But it's true that sometimes, when I try to explain male or female behaviors, you can very easily understand them from an evolutionary point of view. Exactly, why does each sex behave this way? The most common thing to explain, for example, is why women are more selective than men when it comes to access to sex. For example, since a woman is typically fertile for only about 5 days a month, she produces one fertilizable gamete per month. Men, it's millions every day, so obviously. This simple fact also reveals differences in behavior, that men are more easily attracted to the quantity of relationships. Here, I'm really speaking in a raw animal way, of course. Then we have education, we have all that. Civilization has come to frame these instincts a bit, but those instincts remain. And actually what I'm trying to point out is that despite civilization, these things persist. And maybe it's good to take that into account a little. Men are more likely to pursue multiple relationships, while women focus on relationship quality. Because she has the risk of pregnancy. Actually, quite simply, when she gives herself to a man, it's much less trivial than when a man gives himself to a woman. Now, by saying this, people will accuse me of encouraging men to pursue conquest after conquest. In reality, that's not necessarily what I'm doing either, but it just shows why men can handle it much better. One-night stands generally, they don't traumatize men, but women, yes, actually, for women it's much less trivial. So, that's it. I'm going to say those kinds of things which sometimes aren't very pleasant to hear, and I understand that. And honestly, I do have a certain empathy as well for women who were never told that and acted accordingly. Well, let's say like men, and actually they're the ones who pay the price afterwards because, it affects everything, it hurts, we give ourselves, we get rejected, and we don't necessarily understand if we have parents who never explain these kinds of things to us. And if society keeps telling us all the time that men and women are the same,
it's true that there's a paradox in today's society. There are a lot of opportunities to meet people, a lot more chances for encounters, or even for sex. And at the same time, there's a lot of single people and a lot of frustration. I find that pretty paradoxical, and actually, no, in reality...
Yes. Well, actually, it's true that today, social networks and dating apps have somehow made access to sex easier, but not to relationships. And actually, that's also where it directly confronts what I was saying, which is that men and women don't always have exactly the same interests when it comes to seduction. They don't have the same strategies. Women keep access to sex, men keep access to relationships. That's why men usually propose, and women often complain about men's lack of commitment. It's rarely the reverse. On the other hand, men are more likely to complain that women don't want to sleep with them. It's a bit of the age-old conflict between the two, and so today we have a society that has, liberalized access to sex. And so it's true that we might imagine then that, it's great, so to speak. Men, in the interest of men, great, they're going to have more access to sex, but that's not necessarily the case either, especially since, as women are, that's also the case. It's one of the key points, let's say, in the issue of relationships between men and women. Today, it explains many of the problems we encounter nowadays. It's that the female instinct is a hypergamous instinct. Whereas men are polygamous, as I was saying, men seek quantity. I'm talking about nature. Of course, Western society has created monogamy, and that's great, but it doesn't change the fact that men are naturally more inclined toward that, and women are hypergamous. That means they look for a man who has a certain form of dominance over them. I'm not talking about violent submission or anything like that, but simply men who, intellectually, socially, even physically, men who are taller than them, men who bring them something. Simply put, as I said, the cost of a sexual relationship is higher for them, so it's normal they seek more security. In fact, the thing is, dating apps have created a framework, an absolutely crazy amount of choice for women, at least, let's say, a surface-level choice. And the thing is, actually, with the algorithm and constant swiping, you always feel like you could find someone better. And so women's hypogamous instinct has exploded. And social media makes them feel like they can have access to absolutely amazing men who meet all their criteria, which are getting more and more unrealistic. And so, actually, instead of men having widespread access to sex, contrary to what one might think, But actually, it's becoming a smaller and smaller portion of those men because women are still more interested in the relationship behind it. And so, I'm sorry, I'm making my sentences a bit long. I'm just, well...
Not at all. Don't worry. It's interesting. Okay.
All right. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with people watching us, but yes. But so, anyway, all that to say that, in reality, it creates a generalized loneliness on both sides. Women, as I was saying, there are many who are quite like that. Hello?
How are you?
Well, great.
We're in the middle of an interview right now.
Yeah. What is it? Is it a growth?
The topic is relationships between women.
Huh?
Relationships between men and women.
How that changes things.
Basically.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, but you're not really...
Well, because we love this city, so we come here.
It's fine. Paris is safer now. In Paris.
Well, you know, in today's France, we're not safe anymore. Pretty much nowhere, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't you think?
Maybe later, if we're looking for it.
What do you think we're looking for? What am I looking for?
I know you. You're pretty problematic. I was just about to say that.
Why?
You know very well. Let's not play that game.
I'm fine with everything happening.
You are a passerby?
I have a YouTube channel where I discuss relationships between men and women. Thank you, Thaïs Descuffon.
You had to step up in the end. It's basically an interview.
What? It's really an interview in the end? Hello? Well, yes, no, I'm interviewing him and then I start editing. That is to say, you manipulate his ideas?
Oh, no. He asked me simple questions like why I'm interested in those topics and what I think about them. That's it, you know.
And you, are you okay otherwise?
Life
That?
could be better.
Oh, yeah, very.
Happy?
Okay.
How long have you been here?
It's not been long, but not too long. I just got here, actually. Yeah, that's it. Well, thanks anyway, huh?
It was cool.
Have a good day. Have a good day.
But so, I'm sorry, it's a topic. I digress a lot. That's kind of my problem. No, when I do interviews.
But you see, for example, just now we met some young women wearing veils with a man, etc. You see, for example, in Islam, they have still kept a very traditional view of the couple. Some on the right or the far right might be pleased about that and say, well, it's a return to tradition. It's a return to, you know, the couple as we knew it in France several centuries ago. Don't you think so?
Not at all, because actually the somewhat archaic instincts of men and women are basically the same everywhere. But actually, after that, there's what civilization does with it. And we found something pretty amazing, which was Christian monogamy, which in fact had found a sort of balance point between these differences of interests between men and women. We basically ensure every man has a partner to reduce sexual frustration, while also offering some security to all women. Because deep down, what a woman is looking for is still to feel protected by a man, so it's not necessarily... There were unhappy marriages and abuses, everything imaginable, but overall it was still well balanced. And then, in addition, there was religion at the time, which set a certain moral framework, so you don't hit your wife, you treat her properly. Men, love your wives, be submissive to your husbands. But it's a submission that isn't brutal, violent, or aggressive. It was the Christian submission of the woman, which is, I respect my husband's authority. Well, today, if you say that, it absolutely makes people jump. Not just feminists, by the way, but a lot of women who feel that simply not being independent. Or to consider that it's the husband who has the final say, that he's the leader of the family, is a bad thing. Personally, I think that deep down, every woman wants to love and admire a man who makes her feel safe. But I mean, to make someone feel safe, you also have to accept giving them a bit of responsibility to keep us safe. And that means sometimes making choices for us, but for our own good. Letting him have his role as a man? Yes, exactly, absolutely. But so actually, no, the Western view of things is a balanced one. The problem with Islam is that it's a more brutal version of that. Well, for starters, polygamy is allowed in Islam.
Hitting your wife too?
Hitting your wife too. So, you see, we're not in, if you will, the model of the caring leader that a husband should be. Here, it's more about a form of repression that has nothing to do with it, I mean. Sometimes I'm actually accused of having a discourse that's almost Islamizing, whereas...
Was that the implication?
I read that in a comment.
On some videos.
Yes, but that's ridiculous. I'm just repeating what our grandmothers and great-grandmothers said. I don't think they wore veils. They'll say the Christian lie has nothing to do with it. And so, Actually, yes. I mean, there's a subtlety in European civilization that we haven't found in other civilizations. From that point of view, I think there was this beauty in the vision of the complementarity between men and women, and I stand by it. And I would like us, in some respects, to return to a more rational and balanced view of things between men and women, one that takes into account precisely these insurmountable biological differences. What?
Yes, but then how do we return to that?
It's very complicated because politics can't really set rules within couples and households. That's obvious. So what I do on my own level is try to show that individual responsibility does exist, and that if these are topics that interest you and you want to understand what's happening in your relationship, why did your wife leave you for a man with a higher status than you, or something like that? Or even if you're a woman, why are there so many unfaithful men, or things like that? Well, these are topics you can look into on an individual level. And so in your life, you can be much more in control of the choices you make. There's a phrase I really like, which is, to know is to choose better. For me, that's kind of the key, you know? That is to say, I'm not actually going to promote a certain political agenda to restore, I don't know, more traditional relationships between men and women. It's something that's a bit complicated to do, in my opinion, but on the other hand, I rely on people's good sense. I think more and more people are starting to question all of this and are noticing what's going on. Even though society is not balanced at all, human relationships are unbalanced. From that point of view, I was talking about widespread frustration and loneliness. So that's it. I try to make my voice heard to give, on my own scale, some small answers to certain questions we all might have.
And now, Thaïs, I have to ask you the question that keeps coming up whenever we read your posts on social media. All right, you have a certain point of view, but you yourself, Thaïs, yourself, where are your children? Where are yours?
Where are your children, Thaïs? First of all, I'm 26 years old, so I know that might be considered late for some people. But we also can't ignore the fact that society has changed. We study longer, we get jobs later and all that. So I think the average age to get married in France today is 35. And that's also for having a first child. So I'm not saying that's a good thing. But unfortunately, these are still things that, on our level, affect all of us. You know, men who can start a family at 25, well, it's a bit complicated, if not impossible nowadays. But no, in my case, I would like to, it's just that it's not only up to me. So I would love to get married and have children. Now, I'm just waiting for the proposal, and the children, well, I'm waiting.
You're telling me this, but he has a big request for you.
We already talked about it a little bit off camera. Honestly, I think people don't realize that it's not easy at all, especially when you're a woman in the public eye, to find the right person for you. I'm not going to talk about my own situation here because I won't say whether I'm single or in a relationship, but it's definitely an issue we face when we're serious women. Additionally, with more exposure, you must watch out for men who only want to add you to their list of conquests. All the men who don't approach you because they assume you're taken or that you're out of their league and who simply don't dare because you intimidate them. That's a real thing too. And then, like I was saying, I mean, all women are hypergamous, and I'm no exception to that rule. That is to say, obviously, with the level of exposure I have or the experiences I've had professionally in the media and so on, obviously, to find a man we admire and feel. He dominates us in a number of ways, obviously. Our expectations have also changed, and it's hard to completely ignore that. And I would be hypocritical to say that this rule doesn't apply to me. All women are like that, and me too. Some women are more hypergamous than others. I don't think I have an extreme level of hypergamy, but in any case, know that women who are in the media also face this problem as well. Difficulties in finding a partner who is both serious and also necessarily has a slightly higher status than ours. Because otherwise, gaining admiration and respect is much more complicated.
Wait, look, Thaïs, how beautiful it is here.
Oh yes, it's nice here. It's even nicer in the evening when the lights come on all along. I was born over there.
You were born over there?
Yes. It's an old hospital that closed very soon after I was born. I was born in 1999 there, in that incredible hospital. Yes.
Okay, but how beautiful is that? Wow, we're standing in front of your birthplace by accident. It just goes to show...
On the Thaïs pilgrimage, what do? Saint-Jacques Hospital.
Saint-Jacques Hospital, it closed.
Yes, so I think not all the wings closed, but anyway, that one over there had to close. Anyway, here we have. I think we have a school of fine arts, and quite a few French painters have been there. Their names are, yeah.
The School of Fine Arts, which is right there.
Ours, there are still some balls. Yeah.
Toulouse is a beautiful city after all.
But it's a really beautiful city. I love this city. It's just that it's become dirty and has bad crowds, but otherwise, yes, it's gorgeous. The people who don't like Toulouse, actually, we've seen it a bit spoiled by a certain population and the mess that comes with it. But I can tell you that if I were the mayor of this city, everyone would think it's amazing. Yeah.
No, but it's kind of like that all over France. I feel like I'm living at the end of the Roman Empire, you know? They lived in a beautiful setting, but they couldn't build the same way anymore, so they kind of lived in filth, surrounded by columns and magnificent buildings. That's what it's like, the end of an empire. Actually, we're living through the end of the Roman Empire, kind of.
I agree. It's very depressing, but I agree with you. Oh yeah, no, but for me, it makes me sick. Yeah, we're still the most visited country in the world, France. Even though we're in such decline and it's becoming, well, I mean, your videos are a good documentary of this decline. It shows how valuable what we have is, since we remain the most visited country in the world. People aren't even aware of how lucky they are to be French, and just that their daily life is simply living in cities like this. It feels normal to us since every French city has a beautiful historic center, but Americans who come here are like, wow, amazing, I can't believe it, this is crazy. We're just so jaded. I really love taking walks. When you look up, you see signs of history everywhere, on every street corner, and notice it even more when you travel. How much? I mean, it's everywhere with every step, you know? I have a really deep love for France. Yeah, maybe it's cliché to say that, but it's real.
No, of course I share that love, you know. I'm really amazed every time I go to a city by the beauty of the places.
Yeah, it's crazy, it's incredible.
And less by the general atmosphere. And that's it.
I agree with C.
The rampant third worldization of the country, right?
It's true that I'm lucky to have both a certain level of education, whether it's from the schools I attended or even from my parents. I know exactly where I come from. There are streets I go to that are named after my ancestors. So that's an extra sense of belonging I have, which is great. Many French people in France still don't truly know their family's origins, often due to lack of interest or uncertainty. Actually, I have an uncle who is a genealogist. And even so, it's kind of part of the education we had, being taught and educated about our ancestors. So I actually know quite a bit about my ancestors' history over several generations. And it's true that sometimes I think, yeah, but in the end, my family's history is also kind of the history of France, and I think that's really cool, you know?
Yeah, are you from an aristocratic family?
Yes, absolutely. Well, when you say that, people assume it automatically means wealth, which isn't the case anymore in France. Well, I was raised in a very modest family, even though, you know, we could have been rich. It's not something to be ashamed of, but in our case, that's not true. But it's true that there are castles in our family. But yes, absolutely, I do have a number of somewhat illustrious ancestors. If you go back a bit, whether it's Colbert from my grandmother's side, oh yes, yeah. There are generals, some people who had a certain importance. I have an ancestor on my father's side who was a musketeer for the king. I know that some of the women ancestors in my family, they attended the school for young ladies of Saint-Cyr, which was founded by Louis XIV for the daughters of nobles who had lost their fortune. And so, I who have read, there's a whole collection of books like that, children's novels called The Doves of the Sun King, and it's about that school. And actually, several years later, I realized that I had ancestors who had attended that school. I think that's really cool.
It's beautiful. It's the historical depth of this country. We'll never stop being surprised. What's really crazy is that the things we say are the reason we're constantly being threatened.
Yes, even though it's just a speech, actually.
Loving your country means respecting it, loving it, and feeling sad to see it falling apart. I mean, that's basic.
What I was going to say is that actually the core of our speech is a speech of love, right? It's just because we have such an immense love for what surrounds us and for those who came before us. It just makes us sick to see it disappear. Really, that's all. It's not about hating anyone. It's just because we love who we are, we're proud of it. And just saying that, For some people it's already too much, but that's it. Simply we feel attacked, so we defend ourselves. It's just a basic instinct, a survival reflex.
There is a real desire to crush native French people, to completely trample them.
Yes, you say that you are proud of where you come from, of your family, even of your blood too. I admit that I also claim this thing of being proud of my blood, my family, my name. Well, it's really frowned upon, isn't it?
Yes, of course, obviously. My ancestors, you didn't ask, but I'm telling you. On my father's side, because my mother is from Colombia and Venezuela, but on my father's side, it's French. But we traced it back to Louis XIII, I think, with my brother on my family tree. But they were peasants from the Dauphiné region, like many people, like 95% of the French at the time.
95% of the French, yes, absolutely.
Of course, it's surprising, we're all more or less descended from peasants, but for me, it touches me deeply. And when I see my country, I see my father's land, and I see him through my country. What? I see my father, I see my ancestors.
Yeah, no, but it's the same, you know, it's the land we walk on, it's where those who came before us are buried. It's still powerful. What? They're the ones who planted all the landscapes, who drained the swamps, who shaped, yes, the fields, the woods, who made France? Yes, exactly.
They made France. Yes, our ancestors made our country where we live, they turned it into a garden, and we, in 1 or 2 generations, are turning it into a shithole.
Yeah, it's terrible, yeah, it's horrible, it's really horrible. But I think what the French really lack is precisely that sense of deep belonging. Actually, because, well, there's the flag, but it's still a bit, well, the Republican flag. I don't think it resonates with many people. Unlike other countries, we lack a deep connection to our flag. And I really think so. The problem with the French is this universalism that is particularly deeply rooted in us. And that's why we've forgotten that being French isn't just about paperwork. Actually, it's a story. It's something that's passed down. First by blood, and then there are some who become French out of commitment because they love this country. But it's a personal process that, in reality, is quite rare. And in any case, it's not a process that can be forced on people. People who say that we can have an assimilation policy, that's not true because it's not. It has to be a personal desire and a personal process because it's quite a horrible wrench. Actually, I find it almost inhuman. Actually, assimilation policies, because actually what would that be? The idea is kind of to force people to give up their primary identity. I find that. I get that some people don't want to fully disconnect from their roots.
But it's more of a political fiction. We all pretend to believe that's what it is. But the reality is, to really understand the phenomenon of assimilation, you have to put yourself in that position. We ourselves as French people to say to ourselves, hey, I'm going to Japan and I'm going to give up everything I am to become Japanese. Yes.
It's a violence. It's violent. Incredible. That's what sociologists say. So I should remember the name, but I recently saw someone talking about it who was the expert. But left-wing sociologists say that in fact it has even created a certain form of schizophrenia in many people. Actually pushing them like that to tear themselves away from their identity, and honestly I pretty much agree, but in that case, well, we have to admit that there are too many. And at that point, if you don't want to go through this process, which is totally understandable, well, actually you have to let it go, you know, and let the French be the majority in their own country. That just seems like the basics to me. If we want French identity to last, we have to be the majority in our own country. Actually, because French identity isn't some vague thing that comes from, like, we don't really know where, from nowhere, no. Countries are the actual product of the people who make them up. You know what I mean?
It's obvious.
It's obvious.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be different from each other.
Well, yes.
If we are different, it's precisely because we are different by nature. I want to say yes.
Absolutely. Societies are the product of the people who live in those geographic areas. Well, I mean, if the third world is the third world, it's also because it was the third world that built it. So, obviously, if you import the third world, you become the third world. It seems crazy to...
The left would say it's our fault. If Africa is in the state it's in, it's because of us.
Yes, okay. Don't assume that when we arrived in Africa, they were much less advanced than us. That's just our European perspective, which is subjective. They were less advanced, but now they have their own set of values, and we should have left them be. Personally, I think it was more of a bad thing to go and colonize those countries, but what's done is done.
That was an idea from the left, from the beginning?
Yes, which is completely in a universalist and egalitarian logic, to go and spread the good word everywhere. Personally, I think we should respect the individuality of each people, everyone in their own place, and the leaders are well protected. There you go, and I brought you here because this is a private mansion and people generally don't stop here much, the Assisa mansion. I believe this is where the floral games are organized. It's a French poetry contest. Even today I have a friend who won 1 year, and so it's organized here and it's really beautiful. So there you go.
I love poetry and I love this place, the calm. I'm very sensitive to silence.
Me too, I really like it. I love coming here when I pass through Toulouse.
Look at
Thomas, you see the door there? It's surrounded by, those are pomegranates actually, you see. The fruit that symbolizes fertility, it's actually the entrance door for guests and so on because it's supposed to bring good luck. You enter through the door of fertility.
it brings luck from the point of view of fertility.
With the horns of abundance above.
All right.
There you go.
And what era is this building from, do you know?
I would say 16th, 17th century. Yeah, I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think that's it. Toulouse has many beautiful private mansions hidden behind large gates, so most people don't know about them. Inside, there are several beautiful mansions like this. I'll try to show some of it, not sure if... Yeah?
And then the large windows, that's very Renaissance.
Yes, that's it. It's very Renaissance, yeah, and especially the square windows like that, exactly. Actually, yes, I think it's maybe more 16th century, yeah?
I'd lean toward the 16th century. Yeah, more. Okay, listen, magnificent. But so, Thaïs, what are you doing right now, by the way, in life?
Right now in life, what I'm doing is that I'm continuing my little videos. I'm creating some content on YouTube, on Insta, and mainly on TikTok. I admit I've slowed down a bit on Twitter. So yeah, I talk a bit about relationships between men and women, even though I admit I'm a little less consistent than before. But you know, it cycles sometimes, you get really motivated. Right now I'm kind of in a slump, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. And also I'm now working with VK Studio, which is the video editing training program created by Valek. It was kind of one of the first, if not the very first, right-wing YouTubers more than 10 years ago.
He's really an old-timer. Him?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
He was one of the first I saw on YouTube, I think. Yeah, I swear.
Well, you can see very well.
By the way.
Yeah, great. So he created this course that's working really well, and it's really something super high quality.
And everything to learn high-quality video editing, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, and so I also kind of became an ambassador for it because I really relate to the values they promote to their students. Well, obviously Valek, given the audience he has, it's mostly right-wing guys who follow his course and end up getting either extra income from it or... We've seen a lot of people who quit their jobs and started working full-time in video editing because it's a very lucrative skill nowadays, in 2026 now. You can easily find clients. Well, obviously the video world is booming, everyone wants it.
It's costing me a lot, guys.
But yes, so actually it's a great skill to have. We're not giving you a fake speech promising you'll be a millionaire from just 3 crypto investments. No, here we're just teaching you a useful in-demand skill, and so it works. And what I really like about this initiative is that we're actually moving beyond just stating the obvious, which a lot of people agree on, which is that, well, you know, France is kind of a mess, and with inflation and everything, it's hard to get by. And now, okay, so what do we do now? We can each take responsibility individually, take control of your life and create a situation where you can have a family if you want. Because money is the driving force behind everything too, and I think there's a bit too much of a taboo around money in politics in general. Even on the right, where we're supposed to support economic liberalism and capitalism, this is happening, so what's going on? Actually, it's important for right-wing men to earn a good living, because we're not the camp of losers, and to be a well-rounded man in every way. You have good ideas, but now, build your own life too. And the best impact we can have in real life is to have children, start families, and have good careers. And to be showcases for our appealing ideas for people who might want to come out and agree with us because, you know, we don't attract anyone by being on welfare, scraping by on benefits, and that's it. So, yeah, I also share this message quite a lot. A bit more personal development is important. But at some point, beyond voting or the activist involvement that everyone can have, and that's a good thing, but we also need to stand for values. Personal responsibility. And that's her message.
It's up to men to be men and women to be women.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's true that if you want a woman who has certain values, who has, let's say, somewhat traditional patterns, you must also be a man who offers and provides for her. God knows it's hard nowadays, as a man, to find your place. And it's true that one of the issues that comes up a lot between men and women is that many women ask, why? Why should I be in a relationship with a man? What does he bring me, really, concretely? I mean, I'm perfectly fine on my own, I pay my bills, I pay for everything myself, so what's the guy even there for? And it's true that I don't want to reduce a man's value just to what he brings financially. That's not what I mean. But still, showing that you're a responsible man and that a woman can count on you, it makes her feel safe. It's reassuring. And also, if you want, a stay-at-home mom, well, that's expensive. Actually, having a woman who takes care of her children at home is a luxury nowadays. So there you go, just in general, for yourself, but also for family plans. For that. It's important for men to have a good situation. So for me...
Thaïs, about what you said, it really touches me. Because, well, I'm going to open up a bit. I'm going to say something I've never said before. Actually, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. Okay, my father worked and my mother took care of me and my brother. And all my life I sensed a certain sadness in my mother, precisely because she wasn't independent. She sometimes told us it's hard relying on someone for everything, since she was financially dependent on my father. Can you understand that? Yes, of course.
Absolutely. My mother also liked being at home. Well, from the moment she married my father, she stopped working, and after that, she took care of her many children. There were 9 of us, so yes, it was kind of necessary, but yes, for me as well. I really saw that once the children left the nest, well, my mother found herself a bit lonely, and that makes me feel sad for her. I'm not saying women shouldn't work. That would be hypocritical since I work too. What I mean is, if you want a woman to stay home and care for your children, remember that comes at a price. If your wife works, that's also a very good thing. But it can also be reassuring for her to be with a man who doesn't rely even on her. I mean, financially, Yes, if there's a problem or anything like that, I think it's good for women to have, ideally, in the best of worlds, that a woman has an activity that keeps her busy, that makes her feel good, that helps her grow, but where she doesn't necessarily have that financial stress, the financial part, thinking that she has to be a source of money, actually, for the family. Otherwise, well, I think that's more of a man's responsibility, right?
That can really break a couple apart, yes.
Completely.
When a woman earns more than the man, and the woman feels that the man, well, is a bit dependent on her, that's very, very counterintuitive.
Well, as we were saying, right, female hypergamy, the woman inevitably asks herself, what does this man bring to my life? I know it's not easy to hear, and I get that many men today are struggling and think they're nice.
But making money in France is tough these days.
But of course it's hard, so I totally understand. But actually, right now, I'm just explaining also why women are like this, why women are jaded, and what women expect from men in general. So, that's it. The game is tough, but that's the game.
To sum up, right-wing women interpreted your words by saying, they want to send us back to the kitchen, they want to send us back to the kitchen. That's it. That's the plan. That's Thaïs's plan.
Well, it's not really about sending people back to the kitchen. First of all, there were other people before me who talked about relationships between men and women, like Valek or Raptor back then, but they're men, so it's not the same. And when a woman starts talking about that, and who, on top of that, has a rather empathetic point of view towards men and tries to understand their perspective, and doesn't necessarily, defend the women's side, well, actually, there's a bit of this herd instinct among women who will think that I'm attacking them, that I just want to make myself look good in the eyes of men compared to them. Whereas that's absolutely not the case. I mean, it's just that I think there are interesting things to say on this subject. And especially, in a lot of ways, we're heading in the wrong direction. I've never been a feminist in my life. Because, first of all, the education I had, the examples I saw, and also what I observed around me. So, I was never immersed in that. So it's true that for women who have been raised with that their whole lives, well, I'm going to say things that seem totally out of this world to them. It's true that maybe I didn't really anticipate that gap that could exist between us, but no. I think the question I was attacked on the most was the question of body count. And actually, where I even defended a certain form of slut-shaming, that's what it's called. It's the reputation mechanism that makes people judge others a bit harshly. A woman who has too abundant and liberated a sex life. What? I'm not making this up anyway, it's a mechanism that women use among themselves, and actually, I've been accused of it too. Women have attacked me and defended themselves by calling me names. Me, huh? Called me all sorts of names, even Jay. Imagined. Yes, of course, wrongly, but well, I don't even want to justify myself about that, but I mean, it's part of the game. And I didn't even defend myself, actually, because I find it funny that people say, yeah, Thaïs, she defends slut-shaming, and then afterwards, they attack me with that very thing. I wanted to show that this reputation mechanism is used by women among themselves, has always existed, and works well. I didn't invent it, and it won't disappear soon. Regardless of feminism, women use it.
Actually, so yes, of course. And men, by the way, talk about this among themselves too. Yes, of course, they judge women based on this criterion, of course.
And of course, I'm not saying that we should stone women or be barbaric with them. But let's say that the fact that we've completely freed up speech about, not just speech, but about this issue, and that we're not allowed to judge women who behave this way, I don't think that's a very good thing, because actually women are a little bit like that. They're also meant to uphold society's morality and the stability of the family. I mean, a lot of that depends on women, right? And I think that destabilizing the feminine figure, desacralizing her like that, and pushing her to have a man's sexuality, well, I think that actually did a lot of harm to families, and to women themselves, by the way, since men also lost the respect they owed her. There was kind of a way that men used to treat women with a certain deference. Now, I'm not saying all women, there have always been women men slept with and women they married. You know, like that distinction men often make about women, but there was still a certain masculine deference, there was chivalry and all that systematically. Because a woman was someone who carried life, she was a mother, she was a sister, she was a daughter. And so, you see, there still had to be respect for women because she represents motherhood, femininity, except now, since women don't want to have children anymore, that we have to treat them like men and that they can do absolutely anything they want. Obviously, this also means men respect them less. It's not good to push women to do whatever they want with their bodies and claim there are no consequences. That doesn't stop men from judging them. In fact...
So you, Thaïs, do you want to have children?
Of course, if I could have 5, yeah, that wouldn't be bad, but yeah, I would like to, yeah. But, you know, it's not just up to me, but when it happens, well, it'll happen, right? I'm not sure what else to say about that.
The awkward question that I'm asking very seriously. Oh yes, we're in front of a beautiful cathedral. Yes, cathedral.
The Saint-Étienne Cathedral.
Oh yes, it's a splendor.
There is a Romanesque part and a Gothic part. It has a somewhat motley appearance. Like that, yes, because I think it was built in different periods.
It's an incredible mix, yeah.
The Gothic tympanum, the shape is very Romanesque. Wow, square. At the same time, with brick, it's hard to do otherwise. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. This cathedral inside, unfortunately, it's still pretty damaged. Oh yes, yeah. The paintings are a little faded, but it's impressive.
It's a splendor. This is the Cathedral of Toulouse.
This is Saint-Étienne Cathedral.
Okay, well listen Thaïs, here we are at the foot of this magnificent cathedral, and I think this is a good place to wrap up, and I'd like us to finish by talking about France. Pierre, do you have hope, and you Thaïs, do you have hope that we'll make it through?
It would be very hard to give you a short answer. Yeah, I think our civilization can make it, let's say, France itself. Actually, I'm going to have a depressing speech, honestly, like, if I have to be totally honest, I'll tell you, I don't know. And honestly, I think France, French civilization, it looks like it's off to a very bad start. However, I have hope for the European peoples in general, because we still have this European civilization in common, which means that between France, Germany, all the way to Poland, we have a lot in common, much more than we think. And I believe in the people. Actually, I was talking more about the bond, about blood. For me, that's the most important thing, and we need to preserve this physical identity as well, really. As long as there are Europeans, Europe will exist. Now, to go so far as to say, will French civilization survive? I don't know, honestly, I don't know. That's why I don't encourage abstention, I don't encourage that kind of thing. If you invest, do it, that's good. But think about building a life for yourself, starting families and having children, that's the most important thing. Because exactly, you need a people for the nation to survive, to build it, or to keep what has already been built, that's it. So that's kind of the answer I would give.
It's complicated, but at the same time very simple, clear.
Yes, it's a very pragmatic response beyond all the big political speeches and so on. I'm not going to answer from a purely political standpoint, because for me, it's really a question that goes beyond all these issues of division, parties and so on. I don't even know if the Rassemblement National in power or any other party would really have enough leeway to make all the changes that are needed, because for me, it would take a complete 180-degree turn to reverse the situation. Is it too late or not for the French nation? I don't know. However, I believe in the people, I believe in individuals, I speak to them, wherever they live, wherever they are, wherever they want to live. Take shelter with your loved ones, build a family, and ensure your bloodline and people continue. That's most important. And as long as there are still Europeans, there will still be Europe and France as well. But so, there you go. I have faith in that, and I'm speaking to people on an individual level.
Thank you, Thaïs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And you, would you make a connection between this fragmentation we see in women's relationships in France and the political and economic situation in Western countries?
But actually, that's going way too far. To the point where I felt deeply rejected by a large part of the right, at least on the internet.